Hey kids, do you like wrestling? Well, we like wrestling too. We are Shake Them Ropes here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Myself and Chris Novembrino kind of doing a lazy river of wrestling criticism, going through the news and whatever happened in stateside television wrestling. And also, you know what? Sometimes we just like to watch old stuff and talk about that too. Love for you to give us a listen. If you haven't already, we are Shake Them Ropes here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Hey there, Thunder Buddies and Travelers down Thunder Road. It's us, Days of Thunder, the WCW Thunder Rewatch podcast that you didn't ask for, but we did anyway, coming to you as part of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network and powered by alargemanappears.com. I'm your host, your neat little package on Thunder Road, Dave Ryan, and I am joined, as I am every week, by my faithful co-host. He's Stagger Lee Malone. Lee, how are you this week?
I'm good, Dave. I'm good. I have a question for you, though.
Okay.
For the first time in however many years we're doing this show, you're going to have to alter that intro.
Oh?
Because it's going to be the award-winning podcast that you didn't ask for.
Oh, is that what you're just planting a flag? We're going to win?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I was like, do you know something I don't? Because like the fucking nominations aren't even closed yet, pal, when we're recording this. I think they've closed by the time everyone's listening to this.
Possibly. But
We've still got like a week left.
We got the award-winning part in that intro.
We're certainly the award nominated thus far, and we can ring that for all it's worth.
Listen, I just feel like no matter what happens, we've won an award.
I think if our regular listeners don't vote for us, I think I'm entitled to give any phone numbers I have to Disco Inferno, because they're clearly better friends with him than me. And look, if you want Batman all up your messages, that's fine. That's fine. You just don't vote.
But yeah, no, I just wanted to see how you'd feel about having to throw that in on your well practiced and well trained introduction.
I'll be happy to do it. It will, as with every time I've had to change this introduction, take a good 6 or 7 weeks for it to get down, and then occasionally, as just happened before. When you guys started listening, I still fuck it up somehow and do revert to like an old version of the intro that's somehow still in the back of my head.
It's funny how that happens, isn't it? It just lodges in there for no reason.
It's this weird sense memory, but then I think about like how long we've been doing this goddamn thing for. It's like we've been doing this since, what, 2019?
Yeah, I refuse to say how many years it is because I can't. Like, time is just a fucking flat circle to me. Like,
also, like, how many, like, I know we've missed weeks here or there and we've gotten sidetracked. I guess we never counted in the amount of nights of nitros and stuff we would do. But like our original projection was pretty much 7 years flat of doing this podcast before we like run out of road in WCW, and now I'm looking at like, you know, we're into year 5 of the podcast, and
we're not even close.
We're not even on 2000 yet.
You want to talk about wringing every little thing out of a subject? That's us here.
Yeah, I mean, that's I guess the upshot for everyone listening is there's fucking plenty more of this show to come.
And hey, this episode is a great teaser for what's to come.
Yeah, it's probably not the primo example of having plenty of WCW to talk about, because spoiler alert, if you haven't read through the show notes, there wasn't a fucking Thunder this week.
No.
Hurricane Floyd, I think it is, saw to that.
Yeah.
So there's no Thunder. So what we've had to do is, we knew it was coming, But I do appreciate it, and this does go to show that we've become a nice regular part of other people's weeks. So we have a big spreadsheet that we've had since probably like maybe 3 months into doing this podcast, where I've put down.
Hang on. You say we have a spreadsheet. I may have access to the spreadsheet. I don't think I've looked at it once.
You claim no responsibility for said spreadsheet. But it's where I put down all the air dates and taping dates of every single episode and pay-per-view we have left, and all the special. As we come up with things along the timeline we're going to insert into the timeline, I pop them in there and populate the list so that we don't miss anything. So we knew the Hurricane Floyd cancellation was coming up, and we'd had a couple of ideas about what to do with it, and I think we were fairly happy where we landed, is that this just so happens to coincide with a historic Smackdown in some ways, and that's what we're going
tragic
to
in some other ways.
Fuck me. Like, it's making me look forward to next week and getting back to Thunder. Because in some ways, Thunder is like inoffensively bad at the moment, but it is giving us a look into the very near future.
Oh, man. It really does. But yeah, as you were going to say, it's what reminded us was that we have Webcon in our Discord, who, God bless the guy, goes ahead and watches a week in advance of us.
And do you know what? He's not alone. Do you know, like, there are other people, like, we hear periodically from people who are doing the watch-alongs with us. We know it's what's left Alan Forel months and months behind. I'd like to say hello to the Alan Forel of 2026 who has gotten up to this episode.
I was actually going to say in the Discord today that I expect in a month or two, well, who am I kidding? In about 6 months, Alan to get to our Kaz Hayashi discussion and link us numerous matches.
I was going to say, about a year ago, he was nearly 6 months behind. So God knows where the man is now. I guess he'll tweet us if Twitter still exists when he gets there. But yeah. Any other crack with you, buddy? Or are we kind of already heading towards actually talking about wrestling on this horrific show?
I mean, by the time this comes out, anything could have happened. So, you know.
Yeah.
Look, that's the new thing for us. We are going to be kind of taping ahead, so we're going full Thunder. Yeah,
we are. So what we're trying to do is prevent against, like, we've missed a couple of weeks here or there when, like, Lee has had to do parenting things, or I need to go sit in a dark room for a while because I've been bothered for my entire day things.
Different type of parenting things because you've been parenting all day.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. At least I get to give them back at about like 8 or 9 p.m. most nights. But yeah, we're trying to future-proof so that we're not too far ahead, but that we're about a week ahead of where you're listening, so that at least we always have a backup recording in the can. So we apologize if people kind of are trying to get thoughts in live. We will still try and do like a recap of like any Discord messages or tweets we have relative to shows we've already covered on the show. We will try to, I think we'll redouble our efforts. We're kind of we had a bit of an office chat about getting us to kind of spread ourselves across our different social media apps and where we are so that we don't miss anything anymore. So we have renewed hope that we will be better at that.
But here's something to just throw out there. I know when we did get very topical recently with the whole CM Punk discussion, a couple of people contacted us to say they really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And it's because it's not something we do super regularly.
Yeah.
So maybe because we are going to tape ahead, we will be less kind of topical most of the time. Because by the time listeners hear it, will be kind of out of date. So we may do a kind of surprise podcast here or there, being a bit more topical throughout the year.
And if you're somebody that's inclined to pass us 5 Europeans a month, over at largemanapears.com, our Patreon, we each do a solo audio show every month. We alternate on and off between myself and Lee. Grab Bag Radio is mine, and Lonely Audio is Lee's. And on that, we tend to give our musings on current day wrestling when we're doing that show. So if it's something that you can't go a month without hearing some relatively current takes from one of us, largemanapears.com is where you need to go. Simple as. But yeah, as you say, like sometimes we will change up the running order, and like if we get TRLs in where we have to, like we already have stuff banked, but we've promised we'll get to TRLs as soon as possible, we may change up orders here or there. I think the overriding message of this year on Days of Thunder is to keep it interesting.
Yes, absolutely.
Not just for us as we careen into the Russo era, but for you guys at home as well. I think we've got some really cool episodes planned coming up in the next while as well that are kind of like on the timeline but slightly off-piste.
And speaking, as you just mentioned, TRL just a couple of moments ago, next week on alargemanappears.com will be the first TRL of 2024, because we will have is it our first full ROH show?
I believe so, yes.
It'll be our first full ROH show on TRL, as we will be covering ROH Best in the World 2018. So if that's something that tickles your fancy, like they said, just €5 gets you access to that.
Yeah, and we have, by the time this has come out, already announced that our other Patreon show for the month, it's already dropped by the time you're listening to this, is the Non-Rumble Royale.
Yes.
Where we covered 6 matches from Royal Rumble pay-per-views that were not themselves Royal Rumbles, but were either a significant match historically, a great match that we have fond memories of, or something that's just worth a little bit of discussion. So that's what else. And I still have to wrap up the month then with my grab bag. So you will have seen, if you're on the Patreon, I will have done a reach out for questions before the end of the month. If people have questions or comments that they want read out on grab bag to have a bit of dialogue, alargemanappears.com is the place to go. Lee, before we get into Smackdown, I've got plenty of stuff from the Observer this week.
Okay.
So this show is from the 16th. The nearest Observer publication is the 20th. There was talk of, so he obviously went to press before these shows aired, because he's talking about how the initial taping date for this, so they were originally going to do that Thunder Live.
Okay.
And they were postponing it to see if they could do a tape, if Hurricane Floyd would allow them to do a pre-tape.
Okay.
But obviously that isn't what happened, because it ends up being a clip show, as we'll probably talk about just before we get into Smackdown. Huge front page story on the Observer from WCW this week. It's official. As Dave says in the first line, although wrestlers were singing Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead Friday night in Baltimore, when the word of Eric Bischoff's reassignment within Turner reached the wrestlers, once the initial happiness wore off and reality set in, the reality as little has changed. So Bischoff is gone.
He's gone, yeah. I meant to bring this up on the Fall Brawl show, but we're right.
Yeah.
It was right around that time that Bischoff was right on the edge.
He was essentially dismissed on 9/9 of this month, so right after. He was replaced for a number of reasons, says Dave. A combination of numerous bad deals and falling ratings, house shows and buy rates. The company temporarily is in the hands of Bill Busch, whose title has been changed from Vice President of Strategic Planning to Executive Vice President. Creative control at this point is in the hands of television producer Craig Leathers, who has the final say, and the same booking committee headed by Kevin Nash, Dusty Rhodes and Kevin Sullivan that got the company into this mess, although everyone seems to be jockeying for position to garner power and get creative input.
It's just a constant in every WCW story you ever hear, whether it's 1999, 1991, fucking 1987, like it's constantly people jockeying for position.
Yeah. It's funny, there's a detail that because Bischoff had worked the boys so many times, it took from 9/9 until the weekend for people to be convinced he was actually gone. They were assuming it was a work. The most recent one, and this was kind of something we talked around but is confirmed by Dave in here, is that Hogan's retirement was worked by Nash and Bischoff. And Hogan, obviously.
You mean Nash's retirement?
The most notable work was last year into thinking
Hogan
was retiring.
okay,
so his presidential retirement.
Okay.
So the idea was if he retired, people would support Kevin Nash getting more power.
Yeah, that
they
was
get
the story,
behind him because people personally liked Nash a lot more than they liked Hogan. And the agreement was that when Hogan then came back into the company, that Nash would keep his power once he wouldn't threaten Hogan's spot.
Yeah, so I think we brought that up at the time. It was like Nash was the public face of getting rid of Hogan, and he was supposed to be the hero for the boys in the back.
Yeah, and the thing was as well, like this wasn't the only time that Bischoff worked the boys. I mean, like this was just the latest in a long string, dating back to when he tried to work the boys and himself got worked in the Brian Pillman situation. One of the all-time great moments of idiocy in professional wrestling. No exact reasons have been given for the move, which virtually everyone felt was necessary and eventually going to happen, although it happened a few months earlier than expected. Bischoff right now has returned to Wyoming, waiting for a reassignment within the Time Warner company, since he has several years left on a large contract. It's being portrayed as some, you can imagine who, as him getting a promotion, but the reality is something different. He might be offered a buyout clause. We know he doesn't end up being offered one, or at least he doesn't end up taking one, because he's back in within a year, with less than a year.
No, less, yeah.
Significantly less than a year. His overall track record going into this year was excellent, although in hindsight, many would say there was a lot of luck involved. He took the company from $30 million a year when he took the helm in 1993, and they were averaging about $6 million in the red, to a company which in 1998 grossed approximately $200 million and garnered a $55 million profit. This was, and we've said it before, and if you've read Death of WCW, they say it repeatedly, for a very short period of time between 96 and 98, WCW was the most profitable wrestling company in the history of the world.
Here's the thing, the turnaround is like one of the greatest business success stories of the 90s. Like they went from an absolute nothing company under Turner to, like you said, the highest grossing fucking wrestling company of all time.
But the dual things of Bischoff is that Bischoff was a man who knew how to hotshot things, and he could start the fire, but he couldn't keep it going. And Dave points out here, like, he was the person most responsible for the creation of the current wrestling boom, but his ideas were almost always short-sighted with little long-term planning, and the result was a collapse of the boom. Now, he says, in fairness, expecting revenue to continue at that rate in 1999 with all the facets of business hitting a major decline, the company is going to have to struggle even to break even this year. So it is like, it would be unreasonable to expect with an overall decline in the business for the gravy train to keep rolling the way it had, but it is bombing even worse than it happened. Like, again, we've been reporting through Dave that, like, they've been cutting jobs for the first time since we've been covering it to, like, stop the bleeding. Bischoff was blamed. This is the other thing that, like, I don't think, whatever ways you can try and twist things and defend things about, like, him being responsible for the boom and things like that, as a businessman, this man is fucking dreadful. He was blamed for making bad deals in a desperate attempt to turn things around, from the $1 million giveaway on Nitro, which we never really covered, which was one of the first things to have the plug pulled on by Turner, to the Master P debacle, to ratings disasters like Kiss and Megadeth for $500,000 and $250,000 respectively for one shot, to the $1 million Dennis Rodman deal, which resulted in another poor buy rate down the line. At the same time, the gap between WWF and WCW was spreading, and adding insult to injury, Chris Jericho, who many of the headliners of the company had convinced Bischoff would never be effective as more than a mid-card player, signed with WWF and almost immediately became one of their most over performers. Not getting into the fact that they fucking parked him in the middle of the card as well. With the company falling behind in many ways because it had an aged feel, with virtually every headliner except Bill Goldberg being near or past 40, the result was to give a bigger push to older wrestlers like Hogan and Savage, whose status as the most pushed stars within the company led to the problem to begin with, which is true. It says he had taken on an almost Jekyll and Hyde personality from the pressure of being unable to turn things around. When the company was doing well, his personal perks like Road Wild weren't looked at, but when the revenues were falling, giving away a pay-per-view housegate didn't add up. He does a bit here about, like, you know, detailing how bad business was across wrestling when he took charge of WCW, like Japan being the epicenter of professional wrestling, America really being trending downwards, and him being hugely part of not only turning it around but forcing WWF into a position where they had to completely rebrand
they had
as
to
well.
modernize,
Yeah. But the loss of Bischoff has done little to really change the landscape, other than bad business deals that affected the bottom line have been completely dropped. There's a bunch of things. Oh yeah, in regard to various Bischoff ideas of late, the proposed New Year's Eve pay-per-view at Kiss was cancelled, which we had talked about a couple of weeks ago, even though WCW had already put down a rather large deposit to get Kiss for that date. The Demon Bryan Adams gimmick, which WCW spent $600,000 on.
What?
To get off the ground, has been dropped since it was based on a deal Bischoff made with Gene Simmons. The $1 million giveaway has been dropped. The wrestling movie was too far along and will go into production next month. Bischoff, who was to I didn't know he was to be the star of the movie. He was going to be the promoter.
What?
Right? Yes. He gets replaced by Joey Pants.
Fucking hell.
As was it Titus Sinclair? Is that character's name? I think.
Yeah.
How is that in my head? I can't remember key details about my own life, and I can remember that.
I just remember the King. That's all I remember.
Yeah. I will rule you. We'll get to that. But yeah, so he's been replaced by Joey Pants. Road Wild as a concept has been pulled, although that decision was actually made back in July by the company. I didn't realize this, and this goes to show how fucking shady this cunt is. A Monday Nitro weekly cartoon produced by, you guessed it, Jason Hervey and Mandalay Sport Action Entertainment that was scheduled to begin this week has been cancelled. Many point to Bischoff's close association with Hervey and Mandalay as the reason for his departure. There being serious heat on Bischoff cutting a bad video deal with Hervey to market the company videos, when the feeling is it should have been done in-house, and the videos were embarrassingly bad as compared with WWF home videos. In recent weeks, Bischoff has been under fire. Oh yeah, I forgot about this. Not only from talent, but from his office staff for his refusal to fire one of his secretaries who wrote a racist joke that was accidentally seen by numerous African Americans who work in the office. I remember
that story, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, the belief is there's going to be lengthy booking meetings in the next few weeks because it was a real embarrassment for the company that Fall Brawl, all the advertisements in newspapers went out without a single match announced. This was the famous one where the advertising agency ran ads saying, we're the advertising agency and they won't even tell us who's going to be there. For God's sake, don't miss it. Which, for an advertising agency,
brilliant.
That is clever.
Yeah, brilliant.
They were saying, like, it's not unusual for a full card not to be together. Like, WWF and ECW are still very much guilty of the same thing, like, not until a few weeks beforehand. But this was particularly embarrassing, this episode. Bischoff is not only out of power, but he is banned from being backstage at WCW events now.
Like, that's not just, you're not just removed from power, you are fucking, like, just, like it says, banned from being anywhere near the company. Just think of how badly things had to be going for that to happen. Yeah. We've got a really nice, I'm not going to like go through it or anything, but there's a really nice obituary for Brian Hildebrand. So if like he's somebody, you know, we did kind of mention, we kind of touched on.
Yeah, we did mention he passed away and that he had like a much deeper impact on people's lives than you might expect from a referee. Dave does a really good obituary and he points out that like this guy was so special to this community, like even more so than everybody else in this brotherhood, that like he was like, this is not the only referee in WCW who has died of cancer this year. And they like, look how much more effort they went to Brian Hildebrand than, I can't remember the name of the other ref who died. Do you remember there was another ref who passed, like it might have been 98, but he was like, this isn't the only ref who has passed or had struggles with cancer in the past year.
Was Dickinson off sick?
I can't remember. It was one of those Dave lines, and it could have been just Dave garbling either. True. But he's just like, he's basically making the point that like this wasn't just a referee, this wasn't just any co-worker, like people love this guy to bits. They also, we're a month away in real time from it. Dave does a lengthy preview, blow by blow, so I'm not going to read it out, of the upcoming documentary Beyond the Mat.
Oh god, that's coming up on our timeline as well.
Yeah, and I think I will try to revisit this because he does give a bit of a background to Barry Blaustein, how he came to make this movie and what he was trying to make originally. But anyway, we move on to the fallout from just some of the numbers from Fall Brawl, which is just the first major show under the new WCW regime showed just how far the company had fallen. The annual event from the Loris Joel Coliseum in Winston-Salem drew only 3,347 paid.
Jesus.
The live gate was $97,000.
Wow. Not even six figures.
Both numbers considerably lower than what ECW is going to do for their pay-per-view next week in Villa Park. There were a total of 7,491 tickets out, 4,144 freebies. So more freebies than paid. Although not all those freebies even attended the show, and before the show started, since the building was so empty, they invited fans who were sitting in cheaper seats to move down to the ringside area so it would at least look decent on camera. The previous 2 years in the same building, they sold out with more than 11,000 paid. So that is like...
So they've gone from
that's shattering.
11,000 paid down to
3,000. And even with free tickets, they couldn't get it up to 8.
It's literally less than 1/3 of the attendance in a year.
Yeah. The rumor going around backstage at Fall Brawl was that the Bagwell switch was because he didn't want a job. However, what he does point out is it makes no sense because he ended up doing the job on Nitro anyway with the exact same finish that was planned. So why he didn't want to lose on pay-per-view, or whether they just diffuse things overnight, I don't know. But apparently Hacksaw Jim Duggan didn't know until literal minutes before he went out that he was wrestling.
Jesus Christ.
Classic old guy, though. Had his gear. He was ready.
It just goes to show WCW would spend another year pushing Buff Bagwell.
Yeah. And it's funny because, like, if somebody and I'm not saying that, like, you know, I'm not praising Vince, don't get me wrong, because like, he's a horrible, horrible bastard. But like, it's funny that like this kind of shit, people are just doing this shit. It's like the Wild West in WCW. If somebody tried to pull that shit on a WWF pay-per-view, there's the door.
I remember hearing one of the Pritchard shows, and they talked about the Booker and Bagwell match and the Bagwell's attitude, because after that match on Raw, every single contracted WCW wrestler was sent to, it could have been HWA. And Bagwell was the guy that was, when other people were working out in the ring and stuff, he'd be criticising on the outside. And he was the one that was like, why do we have to do this shit? And he was just the one constantly moaning, and that's when he got sacked. It wasn't because of the Raw match, it was because he was just a fucking pain in the ass.
Yeah. Overinflated opinion of himself.
And I think if I recall correctly, Kidman and Bagwell got into it at the HWA, and that also would have been part of the reason for getting rid of him. Because
whether you think it was appropriate or not, the way they handle things, like the one thing that was clear about the WCW guys that came over to WWF is like you couldn't coast on your name. Mm-hmm. It's like those guys that came over in that first wave had to fucking take their licks and just say, yes, sir, may I have another, until you got a chance.
Like who got pushed instantly? Like, Booker.
DDP.
Would you call that a push?
I mean, no, I think they thought it was, because, like, in 2001, their opinion of The Undertaker was, like, you know, you're not just putting anyone in a feud with Taker.
But other than...
It was terrible.
Booker, DDP, and Kidman, I think, who was instantly made the guy in the Cruiserweight division.
Yeah.
There was nobody else that got any kind of like spectacular amount of screen time or level of push.
No. Yeah, for sure. We got a couple of other little news bits from around the world. It's official, Taz has signed with the World Wrestling Federation and will be finishing up He's with ECW through 12/31. Himself and Paul Heyman's relationship has completely disintegrated. This was over promises about a new contract and money that ECW had no intention or capability of fulfilling. He thought he was going to stick around. He had signed a 3-year deal not too long ago with ECW. He thought he was going to stick around in ECW for the long term. He had sounded out when the last contract had coming up, both WWF and ECW. He was looking for close to, I think the number was 750 grand a year, and WWF would offer him 200,000 at that time.
Jesus Christ.
That's as close as they would come. The figure that WCW had offered him never came out, but he did. His people said it was significantly higher than what WWF were offering, but he would prefer to be the big fish in the small pond in ECW than see what someone his size, like what WCW would do to him, which I think was a fair reading of the land.
I mean, listen, for as like WWF fucked Taz royally, but I think WCW, while using Taz as a wrestler, probably would have done even more damage to his reputation.
And it's one of those things, I know it's a business full of liars and things like that, but Taz has maintained for 25 years that like he would have stayed in ECW till it closed its doors if Paul had just honoured his commitment to him.
If he just paid him,
Yeah. And this is not the last person with this story. There will be very few of the Paul loyalists left drinking the Kool-Aid by the time that place closed. It was mostly either the newer people or the people who wouldn't get taken in elsewhere. Mm-hmm. Like the one, I think maybe the one where I'm like, I found it hard to believe he didn't jump sooner was RVD. Yeah. I think that's the last star that would be touched by the other two left.
But don't forget, RVD missed like close to, what was it, fucking 8 months or something he missed with a broken leg.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anyway, speaking of ECW, it was revealed by Dave this week that what had been rumoured is that the conditions of Raven's infamous WCW release include a non-disparagement clause, so he's not going to be able to talk trash on ECW on TNN about WCW, much as everyone might want him to. And I'm sure knowing Scott Levy, he was just, I don't care, whatever it takes, get me out of here. Yeah. Which is fair enough, I guess. We end with the news briefs from WCW. Rey Mysterio didn't get his eye poked last week. He actually had an eye infection. He was scheduled to wrestle Hoovy on Nitro, but the match was cancelled because the Flair, Sting, Luger angle went way long. Why couldn't they just cancel those stupid squash matches with the Sid run-ins or the Wyndhams versus Regal and Taylor? Why do I ask? I love when Dave gets pissed. Chavo Guerrero and Disco Inferno Chavo Guerrero Jr. and Disco Inferno look to be starting a new group. Fun.
Sorry, what?
Yes, that's what it says here. Add Ric Flair to the list of people looking to end up with the booking job. We got confirmed why the Rednecks have the new song as their theme. It's because for once they thought about continuity and they realised rap is crap doesn't work unless there's rappers to feud with. Like the one time someone actually thinks about something in WCW, it's to get rid of that banger.
And yeah, to get rid of something that's actually over, and they could have made the Rednecks into actual faces if that was the case.
Something you will actually be excited about. Scott Steiner is scheduled back imminently. It's been delayed a few weeks because it's speculated he hasn't quite got his physique back due to the injuries he's been working with. Good news is that Dave Finlay has got some feeling back in his lower leg, but it's way too early to know whether he'll ever be able to wrestle again. Like, I really didn't have full perspective on how much that man fucked himself up in that junkyard.
He fucking destroyed his body in that junkyard.
Wrath should be ready to return next month after his knee surgery. Ultimo Dragon's physical condition has not improved, but to WCW's credit, he is still on their payroll for the remainder of his contract. E-Channel is doing a bio on Hogan. Why do I get the impression this will be largely fiction, he says, and was interviewing people like Savage, Hart, Nash and Okerlund at Nitro this past week.
God.
Scott and Dana Hall have split up again. Apparently Goldberg is working through a pretty bad back injury at the moment. That's why he didn't wrestle at Nitro. In Tallahassee, the newspaper ran an article negative towards WCW because in the local market they were hyping Sting versus Flair, although they knew well in advance Flair wasn't going to be there. Apparently Bret Hart bumped into Road Dogg on a plane and confronted him about why he said Bret wasn't that good of a wrestler. In typical fashion, Road Dogg denied ever saying it.
Oh my god.
The Demon versus Vampiro feud, which is totally off the books, was scheduled to go like this. Fucking brace yourself. Demon was to be revealed as the son of the devil, I swear I'm not making this up, who had turned good because he turned his back on his father. Vampiro would reveal to have been sent down or up, or however the geography goes, to garner revenge. They were going to build for a showdown on the New Year's Eve pay-per-view where the Demon would toss Vampiro into a vat of holy water, and when he got out he'd change to a new character.
What?
Yeah.
What new character could tattooed goth guy Vampiro?
Ian. That's he'd just be
Ian from Canada.
Yeah, that's the game. That's the gimmick. Yeah.
I mean,
somehow, in spite of this being pitched to him, the next news brief, Vampiro signed a 3-year contract this week. Despite what you read elsewhere, ICP is at press time working without a contract. It's believed that Bischoff had signed Bagwell to a new deal just before he got sacked. Lots of speculation that Savage is on the way out soon. Flair was at the pay-per-view but left before the show started and never appeared on camera. Douglas has a partially torn bicep since the pay-per-view, but should be back within 2 weeks. Medusa is back and cleared. There's lots of heat within the Nitro girls.
Oh, of course.
Basically, Kimberly and Spice, who appeared on Nitro this past week, are on one side, and all the rest are against them.
Jesus Christ.
And my final and favourite news note, just one line: the Nitro girl tryouts on television are too long.
What? Why are you doing Nitro Girl tryouts on TV?
Don't know. Well, we had heard they had said they were going to be.
I know, but why?
I don't know. I mean, you know why. It's the 90s. And it's scantily clad women. That's why. I gotta say, like, very briefly, I'm not gonna actually read the news story yet, but there's talk of Bret, who, you know, Bret is always one to let a grudge go. He wrote in his column this week an entire thing about how Eric Bischoff's a much better human being than Vince McMahon because of how nice Bischoff was after Owen died. Which I think is one of the things, like, I've always heard Bret say that, like, WCW were so cool with him about that. Like, they fucking treat him like
a human.
Whatever the fuck the rest of the
human.
time. But during the Owen thing, they treat him like a human,
Yeah. Oh, fucking hell. That's the lengthiest and probably most WCW Observer bit we've done so far.
How long are these bits going to be when we're getting all the shit that not only about what Russo's doing backstage, but about the ideas that don't make it to TV during Russo?
I think we should just have a scroll like down the side of the Zoom call.
You know, like Kent Brockman, like doing the apologies, like we're just speeding past.
The following celebrities are gay.
Yeah. Okay, right. Here we go. This is Smackdown number 5.
Hang on.
Oh.
The show is called Days of Thunder, not Days of Smackdown.
Yes. Oh, I guess. Yeah, we have to talk about Thunder episode 80.
We have to talk about Days of Thunder.
Yeah.
So it is an episode of Thunder technically.
Yeah.
But it's a clip show.
A show named Thunder aired in Thunder's time slot.
But it basically replays... it opens with a Sting video package. Like a lengthy Sting video package. All about like why he's turned heel. That's fine. But then it just recaps the WCW title from Nash versus Savage at the Great American Bash. all the way through to Hogan Sting.
Is it like just the most blatant, we're trying to fill time?
Yes, 100%. And like you get some like Larry, speaking to camera, and then Tenay speaking over a clip here or there, but it's just a total nothing show. Like, it's just not worth anybody's time watching it. We've seen all this stuff.
Yeah. I think the only thing that significant that might happen if we had reviewed it is you might have actually heard us lose our minds having to watch this twice.
The one thing is the close of the show is a tag team match from Nitro. And they did exactly what we said they would do on the pay-per-view. It's Luger and Sting as the heels against Hogan and Hart as the faces.
Tremendous.
They gave that away on TV.
Of course they did, with no build.
But yeah, but literally, if they built it for 2 hours, that's what they did. But the most, insane bit of it all, Lex Luger has the bat. So Bret Hart has Sting locked in the sharpshooter. Lex Luger has the bat, and I don't know if he trips or slips because he's not in his wrestling gear. He's in like street fight gear or whatever. And he hits Bret full force in the face with the bat.
Brett was obviously like immediately regretting writing a column that was anyway favourable towards WCW. He immediately gets his face broken.
It's insane. But yeah, that's the whole episode of Thunder basically. And
not the worst thing that would happen to Bret Hart for the rest of the year either.
No, not the last time he'd get hit in the head and regret it.
Yeah, by a big stiff.
Do you know what?
At least he's not still fucking going on about Lex doing that now.
I was just going to say, I think it's possible it all started from this because if he didn't actually get hit with the bat, it's quite possibly the best sell job I've ever seen in my life.
I was watching a clip, right, of Sting, and Sting was talking about the injury off the buckle bomb that everyone thought had retired him in the Seth Rollins match. And
when really it should have retired Seth Rollins, not Sting.
He's talking about how like Seth got in the ambulance and was so overwhelmed with guilt about what had happened that like he very awkwardly blurted out, "Was like, man, I used to dress like you as a kid. Like, please don't tell me I'm fucking like I've crippled you," basically. And Sting did the thing, that like all wrestlers, like it's the whole thing is that like no, like it was, it happens, accidents happen, you weren't trying to deliberately hurt me, you weren't being unsafe, it was just one of them it was what it was. Do you know what I mean? And I listened to that and then I thought to myself, Bret Hart has not had that thought about Bill Goldberg one time. The both of them will be cold in the ground, and he's going to write the last line of Bret Hart's will be "fuck Bill Goldberg."
But you know what's funny? And it's not really funny. It's like Bret in his book talks about Owen breaking Austin's neck.
Yeah.
And he's like, Owen's always been a safe worker and it's just one of them things.
Yeah. So he's like, fuck this guy though.
Yeah. Anyway. Smackdown. Let's do it.
Yeah. So Smackdown, 16th of September 1999 from Las Vegas, Nevada. Las Vegas, Nevada, as the Iron Sheik would say. A 4.5 rating. I haven't seen those kind of numbers posted from WCW in a long old while. And let's, I suppose, rip the Band-Aid off, Lee. This show was fucking diabolically bad.
Oh my god, this show was fucking horrendous.
It's the Dave Maxim that he talks about in the intro. He actually mentions it about WCW in the Observer this week, but he mentions it a lot in WCW, and it's a maxim that Alvarez and Reynolds carry throughout it, is that like when wrestling is hot, you can't even deliberately bomb the project, no matter how bad you try. And when it's cold, you can come up with the greatest angles in the world. I actually thought about it in terms of AEW, because I thought like they've been slowly turning the ship around the last few weeks, and the amount of bullshit that we all hated in 2023 is slowly either being course corrected or pushed into less objectionable parts of the show. And I'm like, but they're cold at the moment. It's going to take an awful lot of effort to get it hot.
Yeah.
It will be hot to the fans that are still there, that haven't gone anywhere, long before it will start appealing to the people outside that set that either they lost or they don't already have. But this was, I text you this, and I was like, this is the most classic example of a show full of very talented stars who are over, having to go through 2 hours of some of the most hideously written television I've ever seen. It's awful.
I hold a lot of nostalgia for late 90s WWF. I do. It's what I was brought up on. I can probably run through every European champion, tag team champion, IC champion, WWF champion up until like the mid 2000s.
Given the timeline as well, we definitely watched this show when it aired when we were kids, and we probably, if you told us then, we would have said it was awesome.
Oh yeah, incredible. But fucking hell, this show, like, we've gone back and watched, Smackdowns before, and we've dipped over and watched it a Raw, and I don't think, like, there was probably 2 bits of the show that were like extremely offensive.
Yeah.
But the rest of the show was just offensive to me because I had to watch it. It was genuinely one of the worst things I've ever had to watch.
It was offensive to my tastes.
Yes.
Like, I like, again, a lot of the people are over on this show, but yeah, it's just, I don't even know what the comparison point is for me. Like, I guess the closest comparison is a couple of months when the guy who wrote this show is with the other company.
And that's what terrifies me now, is, like, we've talked about, the Russo era will be great because nothing will be dull. But I don't know if I can last if everything is like this.
No, because the thing is, it's worse than this, but in a way that's extremely funny.
Because nobody's over.
Like, it doesn't take long before you realize in the Russo thing, it's like, right, this isn't turning around. You know what I mean? I think the thing that makes this period of WWF so frustrating is that it's about to get really good again. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? And, like, you're about to get an influx of the Radicals in a few months, and, the Dudleys are about to come in. Edge and Christian and the Hardys are going to be like the center of that tag division. You're about to have an Intercontinental title division that's like Benoit, Jericho. You're about to have Perry Saturn and Eddie Guerrero in that European title division, so that even when you're not enjoying all the storylines, the quality of the in-ring is increasing, and the lengths of matches on pay-per-view at least are going to start increasing.
Let's start on the show, because
it's awful. And, like, the thing is, right, the best thing on this show is Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Oh, 100%. I'm glad you said that.
This man fucking killed me stone dead about 3 times over in this show, and I don't want to jump the gun talking about it, but he comes out in the first actual on-air segment. The context for this show, we should say, is that there was an incident we will describe later that has caused all the referees to be on strike, so we get a cold open of Earl and the boys on the picket line outside, and we would get a series of scab referees throughout the night, some of whom I identified and some of whom I didn't. So if you can shed a light when I can't name them, I'd appreciate it. So Stone Cold comes out, and again, evidence, like, it's like this sickening depth of star power on this show that you can just, in the Orange Cassidy slot, as we would call it on Dynamite, you could just throw out Stone Cold to open the show. That's such a fucking luxury. Also, we just casually throw out the biggest star in the history of professional wrestling
to come out and cut a promo, yeah.
About how he wasn't going to wrestle.
Yeah. But I just want to make special mention of Austin Sack. I want that. That's fucking... He has this great black and blue hat, and it just has his signature on it.
Yeah, it's like a hat, like a NASCAR.
That's exactly it. It's like a NASCAR hat. It's cool.
Yeah. So Cole let us know. Cole and Lawler are on comms for this. I actually thought, with a couple of exceptions, Jerry Lawler was all right tonight. There were a couple of times he cracked me. When the women were involved, he was obviously horrendous and awful. But this was one of the less irritating Jerry Lawler performances I've seen on our dips over to the World Wrestling Federation.
The magic of editing Jerry Lawler, I would imagine.
Yeah. And Cole is just, he's not there yet, but he wasn't awful, we'll say. That's the most generous thing I can say. Well,
I will say it has that classic SmackDown editing of one moment during the arena and then it's just an empty studio. The tone on the commentary just changes totally.
But one thing we will say, to be fair, as people who've been watching Thunder for a year and a half, no amount of editing was making that commentary better a lot of the time.
Yeah, that's true.
So at least they had enough to edit together to make it passable. But anyway, they're saying when he's on the way to the ring that he struck Earl Hebner in his title rematch against Triple H, and that cost him the match. He says, just because I got DQ'd on Monday doesn't mean I'm done with you, Triple H. He says, Earl was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. My goal on Monday was to beat Triple H's ass, and that's just what I did. He says that Triple H should have finished the job on his leg at SummerSlam because now he will not stop coming for him. He says, Triple H, we could do this the easy way or the hard way. Easy way, a no-holds-barred rematch for the World Wrestling Federation title tonight. The hard way, you leave this building in a body bag. To me, it sounds the easy way is very similar to the hard way. It's just he doesn't win the title with the hard way.
It's pretty decent options, I'd say.
Triple H comes out with China and the Rent-A-Cops. I did like the cops politely standing still in the entranceway for his entrance. That was very funny to me. Like, cops would actually do that. It's like, oh no, you spit your water, mate. We'll take our time. He says, Steve, you blew your chance on Monday, so you can kiss my ass. The amount of times he fucking says kiss my ass on this show. Fucking hell. But he's told, I do have to defend my title tonight. Crowd chant asshole. He says they can kiss his ass as well. Triple H says, the opponent will be one of my choosing tonight and someone that Steve has shared a ring with in the past.
I believe the caveat is it's a main event caliber superstar that has shared the ring with Austin.
And that's as close as you will ever get. And then he fires off a catchphrase that he was obviously trying to get going and sunk like a stone, where he goes, that is the name of the game.
That man,
horrible.
That man loves him some ABBA.
Austin says he's going to be following around all night and his foot is going to be so far up his ass he won't be able to walk again. And I had no idea in this moment how literally he meant that he would follow him around all night. More on this later. It's the best thing on the show.
You thought the NWO was the only people to be treated to incognito Stone Cold?
It's so good. Anyway, we're told a 6-pack challenge is coming at Unforgiven.
Oh, God.
On Monday, the other challengers laid out the refs and the security, which is partly what's led to this strike. We're getting a 5-man Royal Rumble in September tonight. Unacceptable. Speaking of unacceptable, Curtis Hughes wrestles, and there is a pepper on a pole match. You thought we'd seen the last of that angle, the pepper angle.
It gets better tonight, though. Tonight's angle is fucking brilliant.
Yes, because we know what's coming at the pay-per-view as well. An all-timer. Our opening match, get ready for it. It's Shane McMahon versus Joey Abs with Pete Gas, Rodney, and Terry.
Okay. I'm not the only person that had no idea Terry was ever with Dimitri Posse, right?
Okay, Lee. This has happened in the last 4 weeks because we watched SmackDown 1. This is SmackDown 5, and she's with them.
Like, I mean, she's not with them at SummerSlam because we all know that test Shane McMahon match Inside Out. She's not there for that.
Yeah,
with the Posse. So
now she is.
When, like, why?
Well, I'll tell you who else is there. That's Cindy Margolis, star of Shasta McNasty. on UPN.
What the fuck is Shasta McNasty? I didn't want to Google it, Dave. I've Googled a lot of things.
Yeah. I've heard that name. I've heard people reference something called Shasta McNasty. I have no idea what it is. And I don't intend to, because last time I looked up a TV show that was name dropped on wrestling, I went down a fucking pigeonhole of Arliss for the whole evening. I'm not doing that again.
Now, I looked up
and I wrote, literally, my next line, by the way, was, I have no memory of Terry with the Mean Street Posse.
I Googled Cindy Margolis, the star. You like this, Dave? The star of Sharknado 3.
Yep. Oh, hell yeah. Oh, hell yeah.
And then, as I'm Googling this, I discovered my lovely wife has no idea what a Sharknado is.
Oh.
I had to explain the brilliance.
It's a tornado full of sharks.
Yeah.
Starring Ian Ziering and Tara Reid. And I think, is the first one the one that has a cameo by Kurt Angle at the end as like a paramedic?
Oh, I can't remember.
It's either one or two.
But yeah, I had to explain the whole premise of Sharknado and the popularity of Shark Week.
And that there's at least 5 of Sharknados. Sharknados, if you will.
But yeah, I then spent a couple of minutes doing that. But
do you know the other thing I was thinking about Terry, right? This is 1999.
Mm-hmm.
In a month, it's the Terry Invitational Tournament.
Yeah.
Because that culminates at No Mercy, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Yeah, which is October. This is September 16th.
What
the fuck is going on?
And as we all know, in January, we get the infamous Terry, no!
Terry, no! LargeManAppears.com. Can I just say, right, so this is something that's often said about Shane. Is that Shane, at this age, was slightly more athletic and wasn't the boss's kid and actually had the humility to go do some proper training, he might have been all right.
I don't think he'd ever get hired, but yeah, he could have been like a decent little wrestler.
The one thing I say about him, and I think we won't indulge into it too much until the finish of the match, was that for the first half of this man's life in the ring, he was blessed with good luck. Is that either everything came off great, or everything that didn't came off in a way that was like iconic and a talking point. Like the thing I think about, like a botch early, like in the first half of his wrestling career, is the pane of glass German suplex or belly to belly suplex with Kurt. Mm-hmm. But like, I'll never forget that spot as long as I live. And Kurt just go, "No fucker, you're going through this glass." Doing it again.
All 4 of the suplexes.
Yeah. So like, I'll never forget that shit. But like, we'll talk about how like even the things he does wrong come off well. And he starts this match just very casually with the fucking Undertaker WrestleMania dive onto the Mean Street Posse.
Like, what the fuck?
Like, you gotta say, of the wrestlers on this show, he probably put in the biggest shift.
Yeah.
Because, like, again, characteristic of every WWF show we've watched so far, pretty much every match is fuck all length of time. And the main event of this show, I wish had been fuck all length of time. But we'll get to it.
So
takes out all 3 men with an Undertaker dive. I just couldn't believe it. I lost it.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, there's no refs, so it just quickly becomes like a 3-on-1 brawl.
Yep.
And we get, of course, the ultimate baby faces, Dave. The Stooges come out.
The Stooges come out. Briscoe in a ref shirt. And a little line from Jerry got me, where he just goes, because Cole had talked about during the picketing segment that they've been scrambling all day to find referees. And Jerry Lawler, with the utmost disgust in his voice, he goes, "They scrambled all afternoon, and Jerry Briscoe was the best they could come up with." Couple of near falls for Shane. Pete Gas pulls Briscoe out and they start scrapping. I tell you, Briscoe threw some lovely rights at Pete Gas on the floor here. Joey Abs accidentally takes out Rodney. Shane hits a low blow. Then Pat Patterson comes out in his fucking cargo shorts.
It was hot in Vegas, Dave.
It was hot in Vegas. Rodney pulls Pat out of the ring. Shane hits a better spear than I would have expected him to be capable of.
Yeah, fucking Ricky Stark-esque spear.
And then, luckily, I know we're inclined to lean towards some hyperbole on this show sometimes. But this might have been the greatest finish in the history of professional wrestling.
I won't say the greatest. What I will say is the most unexpected athletic maneuver I've ever seen.
Followed by... No. The most unexpected athletic maneuver. Followed by... Then if you had given me 400 guesses as to who the face I would see following that spot was, I would not have got anywhere close, right? It's the combination of the two things happening that kills me, right? So Shane, after this spear, goes on the top rope. Trouble.
Now, I was thinking elbow.
I was assuming elbow. Maybe a leg drop if he wanted to get spicy. What he clearly was trying to do was a swanton. Right? But I am not kidding when I tell you, as he is doing the bounce, his right foot slips. And as God as my witness, Shane McMahon invents the spiral tap.
He hits a better spiral tap than a good 90% of AJ Styles' spiral taps.
Not only that, right? But I had no idea that they were going to replace Pat Patterson as referee, right? Or that the referee was already in the ring. So you see, you're already like halfway. You know the image of Vince like going back on the chair, the meme, right? I was already fully back on the chair when literally the next image I see is the face of Sean Stasiak counting the pin. I texted you and I was like, I had to go for a walk. I was overwhelmed by this. My brain could not process this information. Shane McMahon hitting a fucking cunting spiral tap. And then fucking meat is here. What the fuck was this? I thought there was a gas leak in my house.
Yeah, so there's really no good explanation for it. I mean, what the fuck? Like, first of all, Sean Stasiak follows us. Quite possibly listens to us.
Why was he there?
Maybe if he hears this, he can tell us why he was there.
My pal Pat Patterson is in trouble.
I can only...
There's only one man. There's only one man in this building who can lay down in the law between fucking Shane McMahon and Joey Abs, and it's me.
So the only thing I can come up with, right, is that Terry was obviously with Meat. That they were appearing.
Right.
I'm guessing Terry dumped Meat for the Mean Street Posse.
Or are we about to get
a Meat Street Posse?
The Meat Street Posse.
Like I proposed.
Yes.
But the only thing I can assume is that so Briscoe and Patterson come down to fight. And while they're kind of running to ringside, Sean Stasiak is backstage so panicked that he doesn't come out. The actual wrestler doesn't come out to face the posse. He's actually backstage scrambling to find a referee shirt.
Yeah, he's no. Do you know what he's doing? He's backstage, and he's changing all the tapes.
Allegedly.
I don't know what you're talking about. I meant he was watching some tape, some All Japan tapes in the back, and he was changing his tapes while no one was looking because he gets a bit shy about working VCR.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And he said, "Where is everyone? I better go have a look." And he's like, "Well, I can't go out topless. That would be just silly." And the first t-shirt he saw was just a ref one. He thought, no harm to it. And then when he got out onto the apron, he was just aghast at Shane McMahon hitting a spiral tap. And he was just like, Well, he has to win, so I have to help him out here.
You know what I want more than anything now is Sean Stasiak ringside at either an AEW or TNA or WWE show, dressed in a referee shirt. You know, like one of them fucking idiots that does that.
Look, after this show, Lee, I will be constantly looking on my 6 for when Sean Stasiak might once
show
again
up in a referee
materialise
shirt.
in a ref shirt.
Yeah.
It could happen at any time.
Could happen in any footlocker around the world.
Any. I also want to say, I have had a thought about what if latter-day Shane McMahon tried to do this, and the only thing I could think of was that he would be on the top rope and just burst into flames.
Well,
Because
I mean,
as lucky as he got with this, like, this man most recently couldn't even do a leapfrog without blowing out his ACL.
I mean, Shane McMahon survived a helicopter crash. I'm not sure he could survive doing a spiral tap.
Yeah. Because even now, like I said, when he was younger and he had something like, there was something to him in the ring. He was very rough, but there was something compelling about him in the ring. I think he would have died if he had tried to do the spiral tap, which is what makes it so much better what happened, That was like that. I was just like, do you know what?
I just had a
This
thought.
show was worth it. We could have missed that if it hadn't been for this hurricane.
Why has nobody ever gifted that?
Could somebody please, listening to this, gif it and put it in the Days of Thunder Discord or at WCW Thunderpod? Because, more people need to see, and you need to keep the frame in that has Sean Stasiak counting the pins for me. Because I hope very quickly people say this gif raises more questions than it answers.
I feel like we need to send that tape to Galazzo Dan or something.
I feel like until someone sends me the gif, I won't fully believe it actually happened, even though you're telling me you saw it too.
It's all a dream.
There's a non-0% chance that we're just so broken from WCW that we're inventing things to amuse ourselves. I won't rule it out. I refuse to rule it out. Unfortunately, folks, the show immediately goes off a cliff in terms of entertainment and doesn't really come back. So Steph comes in after the bell, kicks Joey abs, and then we cut backstage as Ivory is tutting looking at Cindy. And then I have something that I want to put up on a tab here for the following segment. So Lee, do you want to run us through this fabulous Ivory and Cindy Margolis segment?
I mean, there's not much to run down. Ivory comes out to the ring, and Ivory, who I should say is the WWF Women's World Champion at this point, comes out to the ring and asks Cindy to come in.
Her music, by the way, very badly dubbed here, extremely porny. But then I looked it up and I was like, her actual music can't have been this porny. And then I looked up, and this is her actual music.
Yeah, it's the Premium Sisters music, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's the sound mixing on this episode made it sound like it was an overdub. I don't know what the fuck that was about, but anyway.
So Ivory asks Cindy to come into the ring. She kind of, does the whole, what's the word? Kind of gasses her up and says how big of a fan she is and stuff like that. And isn't she wonderful for being the world's most downloaded person in 1999? Yeah. And then Ivory asks her to make one of her poses, and then insists on making her do a pose on the ring, on the mat. And it's at this point when Cindy Margolis is lying on the mat that one Jeffrey Jarrett runs in, Dave.
Who, him and Shane, were in a race to be all over this show the most. They were the two main characters of WWF Smackdown this week.
And Jeff Jarrett proceeds to put the most downloaded woman on the internet in the figure 4 leg lock.
Mm-hmm.
And
because I had already forgotten from our last sojourn that he's doing his
I hate women gimmick.
Yeah.
And then he puts Ivory in the figure 4 as well. Yeah.
Like, I'm unclear as to why Ivory was helping him. Like, because she's clearly setting up for Jarrett to get in.
Yes.
I don't understand why that was the case and why then he immediately turns on her, apart from, like, I hate women, lol.
I think that's basically what it is. I mean...
Yeah. And it's not him that hates women. It's the man with the pen that hates the women.
And then it's, the other part of the woman that actually stands up to him is a heel.
Yeah. Who would have known that the week in which we see an image, allegedly, of Jeff Jarrett wearing a QAnon bracelet would only be the second most embarrassing Jeff Jarrett thing I would see this week.
Oh, was that a thing that was online this week?
It was when he was on the World's End pre-show. He was wearing a Q bracelet.
Awesome.
And it was only, would you believe, Rovert spotted it. Doesn't miss it.
Doesn't miss a thing.
Never logs off. Never surrender.
But yeah, just an awful segment.
Reportedly, he's sending a message to China, and he would send another one before the night was out. Okay. Lillian is back with Triple H and the cops. And he's trying to find out who Triple H is picking for the match. And I genuinely nearly missed this. Because it's, like, for wrestling,
it's subtle.
I don't expect something to be this subtle. But you look up behind Triple H, and there's a curtain twitching, and you see Steve Austin's head leering out. And he just stands there completely silently. The commentators never, because this happens a couple more times.
They only acknowledge it on the third time.
Yes, the very last time. They don't draw attention to it until the very end, when there's a zoom in on him. And I fucking cried. There's a better one later.
Yeah, the second one is better.
So we'll talk about it later. But he's just there for a few seconds. For the whole thing, he's listening. I was like, he literally means he's following him all night. And it's not like he attacks him every time. No. He just leans there, and when the segment ends, he leans back out a shot. Fucking brilliant comedy. Brilliant. As well as being the biggest star in wrestling history, this man's comedy instincts, unbelievable. Something that was far from comedic. WWF European title match. Mark Henry defends against Steve Blackman. Good old sexy shock.
Okay, so do you know who the referee was?
Was this? Yeah, it was Tony Garea.
Tony Garea. Okay, so I was wondering if Tony Garea was not one of the guys you recognised or not.
Yeah, they actually named him.
Okay.
During the match, yeah, I recognized it by the him with the fucking feathered grey hair. Yeah, I recognized him anyway. So he's fighting Blackman now. This is again, it's one of the things people would always say about to defend Russo is that everyone had a storyline, and the one thing I can say as a positive about this segment is that they were fighting on SmackDown because of something that happened on Raw. So Mark Henry was too busy with hoes and didn't make it out to tag with Blackman. Now, that's a silly storyline, but there's a through line why it makes sense. Do you know what I mean? It's not just we're throwing out these two guys just to kill 5 minutes.
I feel like Mark Henry gets distracted by the Godfather's ladies pretty much every third week.
Yeah. And that's... Do you know what? I'm going to say that's fine because that plays into the character. He is sexual chocolate.
Can we not call the man sexual chocolate?
Okay, we can call him sexy choc. That's fine. It's one or the other. So anyway, Tony Garea is reffing this one. It's a punch kick special. Val Venus comes out almost immediately. And I don't know what Steve Blackman did to Val Venus in real life, because he comes out with a kendo stick and he does one light kendo stick low blow to the dick. And then he fucking beans the cunt in the back of the head with a kendo stick. He is trying to cleave this man's head in half with a kendo stick.
Now, I will say, I'd imagine Steve Blackman respected Venus for doing it that way.
Yeah, there's part of me that thinks, like, in a real kind of old school shooter way, he'd be like, if he made it look like shit,
he'd come after him.
he'd come after him, and like that kendo stick was going where the sun don't shine. But yeah, I was just like, fucking hell! Like the echo of the shot was just like. Anyway, Sexy Chalk wins. D'Lo completely, like, he bombs down about 100 miles an hour, attacks him, lays him out with a sky high. Love D'Lo, gotta be said.
D'Lo, one of the most over people on SummerSlam, is now just in the European title feud with Sexy Chalk.
Now but he's also now interfering in the second match on SmackDown because he doesn't have a match on SmackDown. Jeff comes out to give more dog's abuse to Cindy while she's on a stretcher in a neck brace. And the best line he can go up with is, "Why don't you download that?" And then Test, valiant defender of women, comes out and the two of them scrap. Then after the break, we have Jeff being mad about Test to Terry Taylor. And the two of them are going to fight tonight. Next up, Ken Shamrock versus Curtis Hughes. Why, oh why? What did we have to do to deserve this?
Curtis Hughes, who was the big reveal on Monday Night Raw.
Yes. Yeah. Now, I will say two things. Two things did make me laugh about this. Firstly, the pun that on Monday night there was a Y2 cage match.
Oh, I missed that.
That's just a good bit of wordplay.
That's very well done.
It's a good bit of wordplay. And then what I have to assume was Ken Shamrock's doing. The name of Curtis Hughes when he was under the mask. Did you catch this?
No.
Gotch Gracie.
Okay.
That references. Wrestling fans in 1999 haven't a fucking clue what a Gracie is.
Or a Gotch.
So I respect it. Probably not, yeah. I'd say Alvarez at this time was probably still writing. He used to do that column in his newsletter in character as Frank A. Gotch.
Oh, maybe.
Did you ever read any of those? Yeah. So, like, there's some people who remembered who Frank A. Gotch was. But anyway, there is Hughes, by the way, during this whole segment where Jericho was explaining that he'll be fighting Ken Shamrock tonight, Hughes is doing some classic I'm from the early to mid 90s mean mugging into the camera
while wearing a rave
which made
shirt.
Me laugh. Yeah. And El Dopo, who definitely wasn't Howard Finkel in suit pants and a lucha mask, comes out to ref. Now, the only thing I really want to talk about in this match is, when do you think Curtis Hughes last wrestled?
Probably in 97 when he was with Triple H.
He last wrestled in November.
Oh,
this past
okay,
November.
You don't mean... I thought you meant before he was with Jericho.
Nope.
Sorry. Okay, yeah, because he has the training school.
One of my favorites, so I did, not a deep dive, but I looked through the cage match of one Mr. Hughes, right? So this is his second run in the Fed, for those of you who don't know. He was Mr. Hughes.
He was with Triple H in 97 before China came in.
Oh, he was. Yeah, so, sorry, his third run, basically, isn't it? My favorite match of his is from 2003. Some indie somewhere. The team of Kevin Sullivan and Mr. Hughes defeated the team of Soulman Carter and Chris Sabin.
In 2003.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
There is some class stuff in his that'll just go, oh, he wrestled that person, or oh, he was around with this person. I'm going to try and go to some of these kind of early to mid 2000s one, because a couple of them are very funny. This is one year 2003. He wrestled a man called Gutter. In 2003, I hope this made tape from AWWL Christmas Chaos. Mr. Hughes loses to Sabu.
Oh, Jesus Christ. You obviously know the story behind Mr. Hughes and why he kept getting cut from companies, right?
I don't know if I do.
He has narcolepsy.
No, I somehow didn't know
and
that.
he would routinely fall asleep during matches.
incredible. How did I not know that? Oh, that's great.
I'm pretty sure that's why.
How is that not, like, he was around in the 90s. How did no one make that his gimmick?
I'm pretty sure that's why he gets cut from WCW in the early 90s.
I didn't realise that Mr. Hughes wrestled on Talkin' Shopomania 2.
I didn't realise there was the second Talkin' Shopomania.
And this will tell you what. Do you remember when this was the height of comedy? This was the Cock Torturer World Order, which comprised, wait till you hear this. Jesus, this is the ultimate, like, team from your nightmares, right? The team of Fake Sting, Mr. Hughes, The Barbarian, Karate Man, The Warlord, and Virgil.
Karate Man as in Ethan Page.
I believe so, yes. And they defeated Chad Too Bad and Sex Ferguson. That match was 15 minutes long.
Why?
He wrestled Billy Gunn in 2018.
Fucking hell.
Tell you, the Mr. Hughes deep dive coming to a Patreon near you, I think. Yeah, match was shite, and it was Fink under the mask. Shocking. Although, I have to say, Fink's commitment to the bit, whereas Ken Shamrock was giving out to him. So, Shamrock puts the knee bar on Hughes, and Hughes gets the ropes, and El Dopo calls the bell because he wouldn't break the hold. And as Shamrock is rounding on him to attack him, he's pleading with Ken Shamrock in Espanol.
Yeah. I think it's El Desqualifico. El Desqualifico.
Yeah. Sorry, I should say not good Spanish.
So Fink is still Jericho Alliance.
Yeah. It's quite the little stable. Mankind interview, not one of the better ones. He basically just does a bunch of rock catchphrases. Nothing really to talk about here. But I do love, there's always like the slam of the week and stuff like this. This was the Lugs boot of the week. And it's the flashback to all the refs getting killed by the number one contenders for the six-pack challenge. What do you think of this Rock promo? Wasn't a great one, was it? See what it is.
I actually don't have any notes on it.
He just talks about the People's Slot Machine. I suppose the one highlight for people who have nostalgia for the time is he does the Big Show choke slam noise.
He says, the Undertaker Mickey Mouse tattoos, isn't that what he says?
Yeah, he basically does the thing he does in every multi-man match where he one by one slags everybody off. But not as memorably as he does for the Hell in a Cell one.
Oh, the Armageddon Hell in a Cell.
Yeah.
But yeah, no,
listen to some Backstreet Boys.
It was just a Rock promo. Like the reaction he gets coming out is just
unbelievable,
insane. It literally is second only to Austin.
Yeah. As Big Show comes out for what is it? This is the Royal Rumble match is about to happen. Mm-hmm. As Big Show comes out, it cuts back to Triple H, who is looking for Austin, and Austin discreetly leans the top half of his body out from behind a cage in the background. And that's when immediately I thought to myself, you can always tell a Milford man. I want to, and I hope I remember to when this episode comes out, put the photo of Stone Cold leering out from behind the cage with Buster Blute leaning out from behind a door frame. Because that's exactly he's doing the Buster Blute.
He is, yeah.
Like, it's fucking brilliant. And the one he does later in the truck is very when Tobias is blending into blue stuff as a blue man.
He's just listening to other people's conversations. Yeah.
Anyway,
do you know what the
5-man Royal Rumble is?
The highlight of this match is
was it that when Undertaker sat down on commentary, he wasn't there very long, because I could not have dealt with him doing commentary again properly.
Well, no, one, it's that the 1 minute intervals meant the match wasn't very long.
And it was, as usual with WWF, a soft 1 minute.
So it was a very rushed 1 minute. And two, the Undertaker's get up.
This man, he's about to go home for 6 months.
He is so checked out of this company.
He is not having it. This is his divorce go home, isn't it?
Oh, I think so, yeah.
Yeah. This is his divorce. He spits in Vince McMahon's face, go home, and they just never pay that off.
Yeah, so fucking, he just walks out literally in his street clothes.
Just casual wear.
Doesn't get into the match at all. Sits on commentary for all of 35 seconds. And then he just eliminates The Rock and the Big Show.
Yeah, and wins. Well, I mean, look, smartest worker in the room, I guess. Show Jaws with Taker afterwards. They're teasing dissension between those two.
That legendary tag team.
Well, speaking of legendary tag teams, Mideon and Viscera come out to try and keep the peace. Rock lays out the Goon Squad with the chair. Big Show kicks the chair into his head, and Vis hits the splash on Rock. Glad that was over. Speaking of things I was glad when they were over, next up we have Chyna in what starts out as a handicap match against Crash and Bob Holly. The Big Shot calls out Chyna. I gotta say, I love Crash, but the comedic Crash Holly character we would see next year, it's not quite there yet. Like, he's still just kind of Bob's henchman, but it's not funny yet.
He hasn't been allowed to cultivate his own character yet. He's just...
I didn't actually note, have they started doing the weighing in at allegedly well over 400 pounds?
They have the scales, but they're not doing it yet.
Okay. Because that's when it starts to get a bit funny.
Yeah, because that
in spite of Bob Holly's fucking sour
that's
face.
the Big Show feud, which is after Taker goes away.
Yes, yeah. This match was shite. Bill Gunn comes out to join the match.
Every match on this show is shite.
Yeah. Basically, nothing happens. Chyna's selling for ages. Just when it looks like she might have a chance at making a comeback against them, Billy Gunn does the most domestic violence tag in I've ever seen. Because not only does he do... Like, the blind tag would have done, but they have a real violence against women hard on in this show. It's really fucking distressing. Like, genuinely. Like, he not only tags her, but
grabs her,
fucking yanks her back into the corner, gets in, does the comeback by himself, and wins. And as if it wasn't indignity enough to Chyna, because it's like they're so trying to have their cake and eat it, because they want the news cycle of Chyna is going for a men's title, and she's going to win it, right? But they also don't want a woman to be taken seriously. So they must have her look like an idiot, get laid out, and be the butt of the men's jokes. Even if they are heels, I know somebody might try to do the argument like they are heels, but this is fucking awful.
And also, Chyna is a heel for 90% of the show.
Yeah. And also they have, like, do you know, they're doing the kind of women are shite thing, and two of the people that are coming out and helping the women look like shite are two women. In Deborah and
because
Kitty.
I don't know if you know this, Dave, but Vince Russo believes women are bitches.
Yes. So they come out with a shopping bag that has a frying pan,
Well, no, they don't.
Oh no! So Jarrett comes out and hits her with the
frying pan. He hits her in the back with it. Yeah.
They come out with an apron and a soup ladle.
Yes.
Now, bear in mind, the one thing you could say in terms of consistency is that, like, Jeff Jarrett clearly isn't somebody who cooks his own dinners himself if he thinks that he needs a soup ladle and a frying pan for the same dish. Like, surely some sort of spatula would have been more appropriate. But anyway, they lay her out and they put the apron on her and they put the frying pan in one hand and the soup ladle in the other. Fucking awful.
Really.
Speaking of fucking awful,
I was just going to say, really great tag team partner that one Billy Gunn is.
Yeah, just fucked off. Pepper on a pole match. It's Al Snow versus Big Boss Man.
Can we just sack off Big Show and Al Snow here? This feud went on way too long. Nobody cared.
The Boss Man and Al Snow.
Boss Man and Al Snow.
Because we're about to go into Boss Man and Big Show after this. And at least that had poetry. And it had
Dead Daddy.
Eternally funny gif of him on the coffin being dragged away.
But no. So let's sack off Boss Man and Al Snow for a minute. I had no idea. No recollection, I should say. Not no idea. No recollection. That the big return of the goddamn British Bulldog was in the middle of the Big Boss Man and Al Snow feud. Because apparently...
the return of Where's My Title Shot Bulldog.
Apparently, the British Bulldog now can control all dogs, in fact.
Yeah, he has power over dogs. And unfortunately, I don't know where he is at this pay-per-view because they need him. Because, folks, if you've never heard it, and I swear to God, Lee, I don't care if there is a mega hurricane, we are not fucking covering Unforgiven. I don't care. Because at Unforgiven is the infamous Kennel from Hell match.
I can honestly say I've never, and will never, gone back to watch that pay-per-view.
If we're saying it now because there's at least one person, there's at least one person, there's a couple of candidates in my head right now, Aaron, of people who are thinking about going up to TRL. We will give you your money back if you pick this show. I'm not doing it. I'm not, because, like, bear in mind the stuff in WCW we're about to voluntarily put ourselves through, and I will be going out of my way to make sure we cover some of the stuff that happens on Nitro in terms of terrible stip matches. I'll make sure we do the San Francisco 49ers match. I'll make sure we do Viagra on a pole. I draw the line at having to do all-time terrible gimmick matches from multiple promotions.
As far as I remember, that the whole pay-per-view is goddamn awful.
Yeah,
but
will I try and look up the cage match score?
Yeah, do actually. But yeah, so the British Bulldog's big return post WCW run is in the middle of the hardcore title feud over a dead dog.
And do you know how forgettable that is? I had already forgotten when you said that he came out during this, because they barely even show him on camera. I probably would have missed it if it hadn't been for Cole saying it.
Legit in my head thought he came back and was inserted into the championship picture, and that's when he concussed Stephanie.
No, that's all in the build to Survivor Series, isn't it? Okay, so it only has like a 4.56 rating, which is very generous. Do you want to know what the star ratings are?
Yeah, run down the card for me there.
Forgiven. Oh, I'll fucking run it down. I'll run it down in my fucking car. This is what I'll do. Right. We have Val Venus versus Steve Blackman.
Hell yeah, great.
1.5 stars.
Brilliant.
D'Lo Brown versus Mark Henry. 0.5 star. Jeff Jarrett versus Chyna. 2.25 stars, which is one of the higher rated matches on the show.
And I think that's a generous 2.5 if I remember that match right.
Bradshaw and Farouk versus must be their first pay-per-view, Bubba and Devon.
Yeah.
0.5 star.
They came in like, I thought it was September they came in.
Well, this is
September.
So
yeah,
I guess, yeah. Ivory versus... Who do you think Ivory was wrestling at the pay-per-view after this segment tonight? Luna Vachon.
Okay.
In a 3-minute match that was 1/4 star. The New Age Outlaws versus Edge and Christian. 2.25 stars. Kennel from Hell. -3 stars. X-Pac versus Jericho. 1.5 stars.
Wow, that had to be a bad match to get that lower score.
And then the 6-pack challenge, 3.5.
Hang on, Jericho X-Pac
I think is
semi-main that pay-per-view. What? Jericho and X-Pac were in the semi-main.
Yes. I also forgot that so it must be literally next week the Undertaker goes home. Because it's 10 days from now and Undertaker isn't in the match. Bulldog is in the match. Yeah,
that's right. I was thinking that.
Yeah. So sometime in the next 10 days, Undertaker fucks off home to be divorce guy, and the British Bulldog takes his place in the 6-pack.
That's why I was thinking. Like, I was sure he was inserted right into the fucking pay-per-view match.
Fucking hell. And the wedding is coming up, so there's going to be like Stephanie is going to be involved over the course of 1 month in a drugged and married to Triple H storyline and a trash can to the head amnesia storyline. As well as then culminating a month later with turning heel on my father storyline.
Well, no, that's December, isn't it?
That's the same, like a month later is what I'm saying. So, like, between now and the end of October, she's doing those two things. Fuck. Again, you know what I mean? Like, you can't miss when a company is this hot. And they're trying to miss. I have to conclude that they're trying to miss.
Yeah, this is charisma-less Stephanie getting pushed as the main event fucking heel.
Yeah, this is like you can see that she's Speak and Spell Linda's daughter here. Fucking hell. Where I even lost where we are.
Bulldog comes out with some Bulldog or some fucking Alsatians.
Oh, so like the whole thing was like what had happened in the 4 weeks since is that like obviously we had the infamous segment where Bossman kills Pepper, cooks Pepper, and feeds Pepper to Al. And now he's got some leftover Pepper burgers in a bag, and that's what's on a pole in this pole match. Bossman got... So the one thing I will say, the best sell job in this whole thing was that Bossman did not want to be within a mile of these dogs.
Yes.
So he got the burgers off the pole, but then immediately threw it out of the ring. And just because Al Snow then picked it up, he won.
So they made sure to say this at least 4 times, that you had to get them, you had to get the pepper bag down, and you had to be holding it on the floor.
The pepper bag. Stop. Just stop.
I think it says doggy bag.
It says some bullshit on it anyway. Yeah, and just fucking, Bossman over the barricade, out, gone
away
for the
from
hills.
some energetic puppies.
Yeah. Then we have, all right, Jerry, Steve lurking in the shadows in a truck, which is his Blue Man Group moment. And that leads to, Intercontinental title match, Jeff Jarrett with Deborah and Miss
It was
Kitty.
an Intercontinental title match.
Apparently, according to Cage Match,
No,
it
wasn't.
That's what the Cage Match said. Test is the challenger. Puppies chant.
Do you know what?
What?
Test winning the
This sucked.
well, Test winning the IC title and defending it against heel China would have made a modicum of sense considering where that storyline is going.
Yeah,
but you know,
they're not going to do that.
But you know, Stephanie and Triple H have a real life romance, and that's not going to work.
Yeah, for now.
Allegedly, allegedly
his
wife at the time.
His wife at the time. Yeah, forgive me for using this refrain again. This match sucked. Interference almost immediately from the Mean Street Posse and Terry. Jeff gets the heat. Steph comes out then, confronts Rodney. Shane is out again, knocks out Rodney, but Test had been thrown into the steps. The Stooges then come out, and then Sean Stasiak comes out again, and the match gets thrown out. A fucking mess.
Sean Stasiak was a very popular face at this time, Dave. I think it was this match where you had no idea who the referee was.
I didn't write it down anyway. Was this the one? Yeah, where it had jacked ref and not so jacked ref on the outside. No, that was the Royal Rumble.
That was Royal Rumble.
The Royal Rumble match. The Royal Rumble match had 2 refs, and I couldn't identify either of them.
Well, one of them.
There was one of them, super jacked guy in a flat cap.
One of them was the bodyguard. What's his name? The security guy. He'd always be ringside in the flat cap.
Yeah, I know you're talking about. And I don't know
he's trying to be a wrestler, and I think the gimmick was he was going to be Stephanie's personal security. And
then, I was so tuned out on this match that I didn't even take note. I don't know if I even looked at the referee.
The referee in this one was the ringside timekeeper, Mark Eaton. The guy that's famous for throwing Austin as beers.
Hope he got double pay. Double duty. That match sucked. Speaking of matches that sucked, main event also sucked. Triple H comes out. Firstly, he nominates Shane McMahon as the ref. I don't know how Triple H, who is the WWF champion, suddenly has the power to bully around Shane, who in storyline owns the fucking company, and make Shane ref this match, and also gets to call his own opponent. None of this is explained, and the reason because they don't is because there's no reason.
Yeah, it's the champ calling out the McMahons for some reason. Should say Shane and Triple H are friendly at this point.
Yeah.
In spite of
point.
Shane, who was just turned face.
Yeah. Now, one last gritted teeth compliment to something that made me laugh that Jerry Lawler said on this was that Triple H talks for fucking ages. Right? And he keeps naming people that might be, like all the guys in the six-pack challenge that might be the challenger tonight. And every time he says it, like Triple H barely gets a word out, like a syllable of their name out. And Jerry Lawler's like, I knew it.
Mankind, I knew it was Mankind.
I knew it. And then as soon as he goes, it's not going to be Mankind, he goes, it was never going to be Mankind though, was it? Undertaker, I knew it.
He doesn't quite say, it's not going to be Mankind. Everybody can kiss his ass, Dave. I don't know if you're aware of this, but they can all kiss his ass.
It's so much puckering. Now, I will say, like, my favorite, like, if I had to pick my favorite, like, dumb dad joke Jerry Lawler thing he ever did in commentary was during the Benoit and Jericho feud when he'd always say, I predict Chris will win. That was a solid bit. And, like, as Drill would say, you absolutely do not have to give credit to Jerry Lawler. No. Very much the ISIS of commentary.
And also the one good Drill bit as well.
Yeah. Hey, there's plenty of good. Look, Corn Cob, there's loads of good Drill bits. Yeah. I got to use that plenty this week. Thank you, Ryan Satin. I'm not owned.
Trevor is a fucking legend. I don't care what anyone says. I
love Trevor Dame.
Absolute legend.
Great follow if you don't already. One of the last great follows on Twitter, I gotta say.
One of the two best Trevors on Twitter.
Can you tell how much we don't want to talk about this? He chooses Vince McMahon, and what I find highly dubious is that it took Triple H repeatedly insulting his wife at the time for him to get up in arms and come out and defend her.
Who do you think Triple H would have had to insult and Vince would have come out the first time? Would it have been like Ivory?
All I'll say is less affection has been shown by Vince McMahon to Linda on television over the years than Eric Bischoff showed to Linda on TV. Okay? It strains credibility in the extreme that he would go, I must defend my wife.
I mean, even in
if there are a lot of words I'd love to use to describe Vince McMahon. Wife guy.
No. Now, it should be said, like, even in her limited screen time here, she has, like, the emotions of a styrofoam fucking cardboard fucking cutout.
Do you know what's really funny is that I think this might be the most emotive I've seen Linda. Her facial expression changes a couple of times when she's in the ring. And that's like a couple of times more than yeah. Like her cyborg face doesn't fall off and you don't see the circuitry behind. Is there a point in talking about this match?
That's not a match.
What happens in this match? Talk about the finish then, Lee. Just take us straight to the finish because it's all fucking smoke mirrors and God almighty for most of the 10 minutes of this match Vince is selling. Yeah, like this whole segment is 20 minutes. 10 of it is just Triple H speaking and an incredibly long Vince walk to the ring. And then it's 10 minutes of Vince selling and not in a fun way, a la him selling in the match with Shawn at WrestleMania, which I loved to death.
Before we get to that why is Triple H angry at Vince McMahon? It's never explained.
No.
Vince walks out and says, come on, let's go backstage.
And yeah, he's like, I'm done talking with you. Like, maybe it's an extension of the whole Triple H's summer storyline was about how the company was keeping him back from the top spot. Maybe that's what he's going at, but it's not explained in any way that I would describe as satisfactory.
It's the opposite of the subtlety hammer here. They just don't explain it at all. Basically,
But the finish is essentially they run back the Mankind title win finish.
That's exactly what it is. Austin's music hits. The Rent-A-Cops like have their little wall up on this stage, and Austin, being that the match is 10 minutes long, has probably seen this. So of course he comes in through the crowd and proceeds to beat the ever-loving fuck out of Triple H. He hits stunners to China and Triple H, and then he just puts Vince on top.
Yeah,
and wakes up Shane, so Shane makes the count.
Vince got great colour, by the way, in this
Vince
match.
ran the blades. He took his moment. Funniest part of it all is Vince gets the 1, 2, 3 and Austin's music plays.
Yeah. Just because they wanted a pop.
Yeah, they wanted Austin's music to play after the match. Just a god-awful close to what was a horrendous television show.
Yeah. Vince is WWF champion. He would obviously not hold it long. He would relinquish it.
So, when does Vince Russo win the WCW World Title?
About a year after this.
Is it August, September?
Let me find out. It's actually almost exactly a year after this. So this was September 16th, 1999. He wins it on September 25th, 2000 from Booker T.
So Vince Russo booked Vincent McMahon to win the WWF title like exactly a year before he would desperately run that story back, except this time involving himself.
Yeah. Like a storyline that didn't work when they did it this time with Vince. Doesn't make them an extra dime. He tries to run it back later, like I said, in a much worse company with a much less believable guy winning. Like, Vince at least looks tough.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Vince, his Jack LaLanne physique, as Shawn Michaels once said,
been in there with the actual main eventers. But also, neither Vince would actually lose the title. They would both relinquish the titles.
Yeah. Vince, at least in storyline, they did the whole thing that
he never wanted it.
He never wanted it, and he's a babyface at the time. Whereas the Vince Russo thing, like, I wonder, would things have been different were it not for the fact that the man was getting a concussion every 5 minutes around this time? Like, when he starts wearing the hockey helmet when he's in the ring. We got all that ahead of us, buddy.
After this episode, I think I've had enough Vince Russo.
Oh, have you? I can't wait. Like, I'm giddy because, like, I just need to get there. I've been telling myself this for 2 years of podcasting. I just need to get to this point because then we're gonna get into my end game, my personal end game, where we get through all these episodes of TV where I've watched every single one of them before in real time, and you haven't seen any of them apart from like the occasional match.
Like as I said before, I dipped in and out of WCW in 2000. So yeah, can't wait.
It's all ahead of you, buddy. All ahead of you. Anyway, I don't have the finish counter because who the fuck cares?
There was not one
Smackdown.
Clean finish on this show.
But winners and losers.
Us. We lost. No, this show fucking awful. I mean, other than Austin, and
just say Shane McMahon somehow surviving his dive off the top rope, and Sean Stasiak somehow managing to get on TV twice in 2 hours.
Austin and Rock just carrying this company at this point. Triple H isn't there yet. And I think that doesn't help either with the whole storyline with Vince, is that the fact that Triple H isn't quite there, and it wouldn't be until Foley gets him there.
Yeah.
Like, if they had to run this back a year later with Triple H, it would have worked a lot better. Mm-hmm. But I understand they had to get him with Stephanie to Foley, and it was all part of the process. And they kind of, I'll give them credit. They committed from June through to December, they committed to making Triple H a guy.
Look, on one thing you can't fault them is that, unlike their opposition, they didn't hotshot it. And even when, like you said, there are moments where it's not over yet.
They just kept going with it.
It isn't getting over the level they want. They stayed the course because they knew what they wanted. And look, until he blew his quad out, it looked like it was really paying off. Because they did get him there. He was a top... And look, he remained a top guy when he came back, but just in...
to less people.
He couldn't wrestle anymore when he came back.
But yeah, no, just a god-awful episode of television.
Yeah. Well, that was Days of Smackdown for this week. I can't believe I'm in the position where I'm longing for the sweet embrace of World Championship Wrestling when we return on the free feed, but here we are.
God, give me a Juventud Guerrero match, Dave.
It's true, man. You don't know what you got till it's gone. They paved paradise and put up a parking lot. That's what I always say. Right, anyway, for this weird-ass episode...
Of all the things I expected, a Counting Crows reference was not one of them.
I like to keep you guessing, buddy. I like to keep you guessing. For this episode of Days of Thunder, thank you very much. We'll see you back on the free feed in 2 weeks and next week over at alargemanappears.com. Thanks very much for listening. See you soon. Bye-bye. Thanks everyone for listening to another episode of Days of Thunder. Days of Thunder was produced by Lee Malone and edited by me, Dave Ryan. Keep up to date with the show and find all the ways to listen to us. You can follow us on Twitter at WCW Thunderpod or click the Linktree link in our Twitter bio or in the show notes. I am at the Day to Dave on Twitter and Lee is at Malone_713. Days of Thunder is a part of the Voices of Wrestling podcast network. Follow the VOW network anywhere good podcasts are sold for more fine podcasts that you can shake a stick at. Thanks.
Music. It's not just part of our daily lives, it's part of our wrestling fandom as well, and it has been for decades. That's where this show comes in. Music of the Mat, the podcast devoted exclusively to the music of pro wrestling, hosted by Andrew Rich. Hey, that's me. Each episode delivers a different topic with a variety of great guests, fun conversations, musical analysis, and of course, a heartfelt pun or two. New episodes drop every other Tuesday on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast app of choice. Check out Music of the Mat only on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network.